Apple was not always a giant with a market capitalization of $3 trillion. It used to lose money and was rapidly heading toward collapse. It was this desperation that pushed the company to take bold steps, go beyond California, and form a partnership that quietly reshaped the global balance of power. Over the past 10 years, Apple has invested more in China than the United States spent on rebuilding Europe after World War II, more than $500 billion. And now, the company cannot simply walk away. What started as a cost-cutting move has turned into a dependency with serious consequences. This is not just a business story. It is a story of how the world's most valuable company helped a new rival to the United States rise, a country that today challenges America in technology, trade, and global influence. This video tells a story that is rarely discussed, so stay with us and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Apple is often seen as a symbol of American tech, designed in California or made around the world. But if you look closer, it becomes clear that almost all iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks are assembled far outside the United States. More than 90% of iPhones are produced in China, and this is no coincidence. It is the result of years of growing dependence. By 2015, Apple was investing around $55 billion per year into its Chinese operations. Over 10 years, that total exceeded $500 billion, more than what the US government has spent on the CHIPS Act or Trump's Golden Dome project. This is not just business, it is historic in scale. Today, China is not just Apple's assembly line, but also a massive market. In 2023, the company earned more than $72 billion there, making China its second most important market after the United States. For a short time, China even overtook the US in iPhone sales. And all of this became possible thanks to years of deep integration into the Chinese economy and a long-standing bet that China would remain a reliable partner. But there is one crucial detail. Apple did not just shift production, it built an entire ecosystem around China. Factories, suppliers, engineers, logistics, everything is tailored to local conditions. This makes production incredibly efficient, but also nearly impossible to move. To leave, Apple would have to start from scratch. Retrain workers, move equipment, redesign workflows. Most of the machines involved are custom-built, and now many of them are also under China's export control. This is the part of Apple's story that is rarely told, a story of how global expansion turned into invisible chains and how one of the most powerful companies in the world ended up in a dependency it no longer controls. To understand how this happened, we need to go back to when everything nearly ended. In the mid-1990s, Apple was in deep crisis. The company was losing ground in the computer market and bleeding money. In 1996, Apple's losses reached $740 million, the equivalent of more than $1.4 billion today. Its products were expensive, sales were falling, and Microsoft's Windows-based computers were taking over the market. Things got so bad that Apple hired a bankruptcy attorney. The question became urgent. Could the company even survive? One of the reasons for Apple's decline was its reluctance to outsource manufacturing. While competitors were moving assembly overseas, Apple insisted on full control and kept production in Fremont, California. This meant high costs and little flexibility. That approach worked at first, but over time, it became a burden. Apple began cautiously looking for alternatives. In 1980, it opened a factory in Ireland, then some operations in Singapore, placing small orders with American contractors like CSI Systems. But these were just experiments. Even in the early 1990s, the company continued to bet on in-house production, such as with its factory in Colorado in 1991. Everything changed when Apple was on the brink of collapse. Then it became clear, without a global strategy, the company would not survive. Like many American corporations, Apple turned its attention eastward. South Korea was already developing rapidly, and Apple began working with LG on displays. In Taiwan, it signed contracts with Quanta and Inventec to assemble laptops. These early steps laid the foundation for a much larger decision, shifting production to China. At first, the transition was slow, but the process soon accelerated dramatically. Apple began offshoring production out of desperation, but it quickly became a core part of its strategy, especially after the company discovered a then little-known firm called Foxconn. In the early 2000s, Apple was looking for a manufacturing partner that could move fast, handle massive volumes, and maintain high quality. That was when it connected with Foxconn, a Taiwanese company run by energetic entrepreneur Terry Gou. At the time, Foxconn was just one of many electronics factories, but what Gou proposed changed the fate of Apple and of China. Foxconn did not just offer cheap labor, it offered scale. In Shenzhen, Gou built an entire industrial city, Foxconn City, where hundreds of thousands of people could live and work. At its peak, over 350,000 employees worked there, assembling Apple devices around the clock. A supplier network formed around the factory. Within a few years, Foxconn became Apple's main manufacturing partner, and China played a key role in that success. Local authorities gave Foxconn tax breaks, cheap land, resources, and loans from state banks. This support was part of a broader strategy. China saw Apple as a chance to speed up its industrial development. Terry Gou seized the opportunity and opened over 30 factories across the country, creating a manufacturing network unmatched by any competitor. When the first iPhone launched in 2007, Foxconn bet on its success and quickly expanded production. The gamble paid off. Within a few years, the iPhone accounted for more than half of Apple's revenue, and Foxconn gained almost complete monopoly over its assembly. But this was more than just a profitable partnership. It became a catalyst for massive change. Foxconn helped China transform into the world's manufacturing powerhouse. While the world admired Apple's sleek design, a quiet transformation was unfolding behind the walls of Chinese factories. China was not just assembling electronics, it was learning, gaining experience, and preparing for much larger ambitions. At Foxconn's factories, the cost of Apple's global success became hard to ignore. In 2010, a wave of suicides at the Shenzhen plant shocked the world. Young workers, mostly from poor rural areas, lived in cramped dormitories and worked 12-hour shifts, 6 to 7 days a week. In the early years, they were paid just 50 cents an hour. When the suicides increased, Foxconn did not improve conditions. It installed nets on the buildings to prevent further deaths. Later, reports emerged about child labor, extreme overtime, and forced labor practices. Investigations revealed that some students were forced to work night shifts under the threat of being denied graduation. In response, Apple promised audits, implemented new standards, and began publishing annual social responsibility reports. But real changes were slow. Apple's entire business model depends on cheap labor, tight deadlines, and minimal disruptions. And that kind of system naturally leads to overreach and cost-cutting at the expense of workers. But this is not just a labor issue. It also speaks to the role of Chinese authorities in the entire structure. Local officials not only turned a blind eye to violations, they often actively supported Foxconn's operations. For the Communist Party, these were not just jobs. They were a way to attract foreign firms, acquire technology, and boost China's industrial power. By allowing this system to thrive, Beijing achieved something else: leverage. Apple gained efficiency, but China gained influence. And over time, that balance began to shift away from Apple. In 2013, shortly after Xi Jinping became China's top leader, state media launched a massive attack on Apple. The accusations focused on its warranty policies, and were later shown to be exaggerated or even fabricated. But Apple took the message seriously. Tim Cook apologized, emphasized how important China was to the company, and even improved customer service there to a level better than in the United States. This was not just a PR move. From that moment, Apple began aligning closely with Chinese interests. Inside the company, a special team was formed, the so-called Gang of Eight, dedicated solely to managing relations with Chinese authorities. Their conclusion was clear: to operate in China, you have to play by the rules of the Communist Party. So Apple began transferring not only money, but also knowledge. The company invested billions into training programs, supplier development, and engineering education. Over 25 years, it helped train around 28 million people in China, from factory workers to engineers. Many of them later joined local firms or became educators, spreading the experience gained through Apple. This talent pool gave Chinese industry a powerful boost. It fit perfectly into the state's Made in China 2025 initiative, aimed at gaining leadership in high-tech sectors. from manufacturing and robotics to semiconductors. And Apple's contribution to that goal turned out to be significant. The company simply wanted to survive, but in the process, it helped China close the gap with the West, not just in smartphones, but in strategic industries that influence power, production, and global influence. The factories that assemble iPhones are capable of making more than just phones. They can produce virtually anything. That is the power of modern manufacturing. The same machines, robots, and systems used to build hundreds of millions of Apple devices can be reconfigured to produce military hardware. Switching from smartphones to drones or missile components is not a leap. It is just a matter of changing the task. This is what makes Apple's role in China's rise so complex and controversial. Over the years, the company trained tens of thousands of engineers in precision manufacturing. These specialists did not all stay with Apple or Foxconn. Many moved on to Chinese tech and defense firms, taking their knowledge and experience with them. As a result, China gained not just jobs, it gained people capable of advancing its military and industrial capabilities to a new level. This is something Alexander Hamilton, one of the founding fathers of the United States, once warned about. He believed that a nation's independence and security depend on its manufacturing base. Without it, a country becomes vulnerable, not just economically, but also militarily. Today, China is the world leader in drone exports. It is rapidly developing hypersonic weapons, satellites, and surveillance systems. All of this was made possible by mass production and the technical foundation, the very one Apple helped build. Of course, Apple never intended to support China's military ambitions, but the tools it created opened doors far beyond ordinary consumer electronics. Whenever political pressure over China intensifies, Apple announces another historic project. But in reality, such announcements often feel more like headlines than actual actions. At times, it seems the most American thing about Apple is its press releases. Apple did not just build factories in China, it helped create something far greater. Now the company finds itself caught between profit and control, between influence and compromise. The question is not whether Apple wants to leave, but whether it can. And what will happen to the US economy if it cannot? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video showed you a new side of the story, give it a like, subscribe, and share it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Take care.